And welcome to Justice Serve TV. Michael Bryant here. Good to have you along. There's Linda Kenny Bodden. How are you?
Happy Friday to you all. Yeah, I've been working in my home office, so I didn't have the need
No pearls
to get,
or anything today?
No, I'm not clutching my pearls, although somebody by the name of Fani Willis maybe should be clutching her pearls. I hear
Without further ado, we're so glad to have Fani's worst nightmare. And I don't know why, Fani's so upset, but nonetheless, we are so happy to have with us Ashleigh Merchant. How are you?
It's good to see you. I'm doing great. How are y'all?
Just wonderful. Probably a little better than Fani's doing these days. Before we get into where the heck we are, let me lay the real quick primer for those who don't recall your relationship with Fani Willis. I think you've been credited with upending pretty much every case that she's dabbled in over the last couple of years, beginning with the Trump election interference case. You represent one of the current clients in that case, which I guess is still around. We're going to find out. And of course, then you wanted some records because you were so nosy. You wanted to find out where the Fulton County money was being spent, maybe as it related to her then boyfriend, Nathan Wade, who has now been removed from the case as a result of some of your fine work. So now we learn that the court has finally decided not only were you correct in going after the record she did not provide, but you are going to get paid for the effort you had to expend to try and get her to do her job and Dexter bond. $54K. So when she does pay that,
$54K, $103.21.
Yes. Mailings, because she made us serve her and reserve her, and she evaded service. I mean, it's crazy.
Well, when she pays you, I'm coming down for a free meal. I'm getting the feeling that may not be anytime soon. So what's the latest?
You sound like my kids, what they want to do with money. They saw the news. They're like, what are we getting? I was like, you're getting a mortgage. Oh, yeah. So the news is that we were awarded our fees. And so part of that is attorney's fees. Part of that's our expenses, and we actually had a lot of expenses in this case because they made it so difficult to serve her, and it's crazy in cases like this where we were trying to cut costs as much as possible. We offered them to accept service. Do you really want us to have to pay our process server to serve you? We have to pay for all that, and they made it as difficult as possible. So that's what those fees are for.
Well, let's remind the court what happened here is that you sued for some records that you wanted to know about, and you can tell us which ones, but I'm going to go right to what the court said about the finding of Fani Willis. It's Fulton County Superior Court Judge Rachel Krause found the failures to comply with the records law were intentional, not done in good faith, and were substantially groundless and vexatious. That's pretty deep.
I know that's an SAT word, but I felt it. I felt vexated, or whatever the word is.
And she further said that Willis's office lacked substantial justification for not complying, and she kind of blamed also Mr. Dexter Bond because he didn't even call you, and he said he treated you differently than he treated any other person that asked for public records.
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely felt that. So what you were asking, Linda, is we just asked for things that weren't really that awful. They weren't that difficult. I was asking for lists of attorneys that had been hired. I wanted to know like their roster, who the attorneys were that were hired in that office. And I was trying to track money. But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I'm trying to track. It's a simple request. People are entitled to know who's employed there. And they took the position just on that one request, for example, that it didn't exist. And then as we got into the case, that sounds ridiculous when you're like, wait, you don't know who's employed with you. But then as we got into the case, we realized that, they paid bar dues for these lawyers. So they had submitted every year, they had to submit a list to the state bar. They submitted lists to the county. They had tons of lists showing all of the attorneys that were employed. It was just a situation where they didn't want to go look for them. And, it became clear with Dexter Bond's testimony that he took it as if we asked for a document, if he didn't physically have it within arm span reach, then his whole office didn't have it.
And his arm span is what, this big?
Right. Like if it literally was not right within his view, if he had to turn his head left or right, then it doesn't exist. And that's not what the law says. I mean, that's like asking me, you know, hey, do I have a restroom in this office? No, I don't. Well, if you go out the door, there's a restroom, you know. He was construing it that narrowly, and he was doing it on purpose because it was me, and just taking really unreasonable positions. You know, we asked for things. One of the things that I had asked for, it's kind of interesting because now it seems, you know, it's kind of like ancient history at this point. But originally I had been interviewing witnesses and they were saying, I can't talk to you because I signed a confidentiality agreement. And I was like, wait, what? You know, you're
witnesses in her office?
Yeah, people who worked for her. And, you know, that's a county staff. So signing a confidentiality agreement, I mean, this is not a Fortune 500 company. We're not talking about trade secrets here. You know, you're barred by work product and attorney-client privileges, but there's no confidentiality agreement with your work. And, you know, hearing that she had made people sign that, I said, well, I want to see what these are. You know, I want to see what they are. And some people gave them to me. So I knew they existed. So I took the document and I asked for them through open records requests as I'm looking at the document. So I know what I'm asking for. And Dexter Bond said they don't exist. And
wow.
I know they exist, you know, so it was just those types of positions that were just really unreasonable.
Yeah, and for those who don't remember Dexter Bond, take a look. We've run a number of his performances. He's just such a slimy bastard. He's just, you know, he's so indignant that he has to be there on the stand answering these petulant questions from you.
And it's his job. He's the records custodian. This is literally his job.
Okay, so let's talk the numbers and dates. You haven't gotten paid yet, have you?
No, I haven't gotten paid yet. And I have seen statements in the media where she's told, or her office has told other media entities that she plans on appealing. So, which is very interesting to me because this is, you know, this is a discretionary issue with the judge. I mean, it was pretty clear cut. And, you know, if she plans on appealing our attorney's fees, I mean, we were extremely reasonable with attorney's fees. It's not our fault that she was so litigious. They filed a ton of motions. They were extremely litigious. You know, we filed a number of open records lawsuits over the years. And normally whenever we file them and the county attorney gets involved, they immediately say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. The agency should have given you these. They give them to us. They try to minimize our fees. They try to make it go away. You know, the position that their office took was just so unique compared to how most public agencies have responded once they're actually called out. So, you know, the amount of fees really demonstrates just how dug in and how litigious they were.
And when she does pay, because eventually it will happen, or the office pays, because eventually that will happen, in my opinion, does she get to use the county funds, the credit card, the taxpayers' dollars? Or does it come out of her private purse, you know, the money that she hoards away and carries away?
Just some cash. You might get paid in cash.
The rainy day cash. That we heard about at that hearing when you, on the Trump matter.
Yeah, I mean, and she's got, you know, she's been doing fundraisers to try. She did a big fundraiser to try and raise money so she could sue the county commissioners because they weren't giving her all the money that she wanted. So, I mean, she definitely has funds to do that. It's going to be up to the county if they take it out of her budget. I mean, she's not going to have to pay this judgment. I can tell you that. It's going to come from the county. But where the county gets the money, that's the other question. You know, does the county take it out of the general funds or do they take it out of her budget? I mean, if it were me, I would take it out of her budget. You know, I think that's reasonable. You know, it should come
even then. I mean, that's the only way she'll feel it. But it's still taxpayer money.
It's 100%
taxpayer money that she is squandering for her own personal little wars.
Right.
You know?
Which is why it's disappointing that she plans on appealing, because there's no grounds to appeal. This is, I mean, it's very clear cut, and that's just going to unfortunately raise fees. I mean, that's one of the things that I think is so frustrating about all of this is every time that she would evade service and we'd have to get her reserved, or she wouldn't agree to accept service of something, or she filed a frivolous motion, you know, all that's doing is causing us to spend our time, which is our money, defending it, which ultimately the taxpayers have to bear. And it's just, you know, it's unfortunate because nothing may happen to her about that. I mean, they're just going to keep paying her bill, I guess.
Yeah. And when you were seeking discovery in the Trump suit and you had witnesses on the stand and the question was, you remember you served her to testify, I guess, right? And she first was evade that. And then all of a sudden she came running down. I want to testify, but she apparently doesn't want to give these records, I gather, and she doesn't want to pay. Did you ever get all these records that you were seeking?
No, and so part of the order, so the order is not just money. The order also is what's called injunctive relief, which is where the court orders something happen. And the court was very specific. You have to go search for these documents. You have to actually look, because a lot of the documents we were able to get from other sources, but we weren't able to get everything. And so her office has to go and actually do what they should have done, now 18 months ago when I first requested them. They have to actually go look for the documents. And it's very clear that with open records, you can't just stick your head in the sand and say, we don't have something. You have to actually search for it. And that's reasonable. If you think about it in the modern day, we keep everything on our computers. We keep it on email. We use texts. I mean, you probably have files on your phone. I have files on my phone. I have Adobe on my phone. I mean, we have all of these different servers and services that we use. It's reasonable for open records custodians to actually search for them. It's not reasonable for them to say, oh, well, I don't have it in a stack of papers sitting on my desk. This order makes clear that you have to actually go and look for them.
Crazy idea. And, and we've talked about this before, how frustrating it is. And look what you're doing to get it right. There are a lot of folks that would just go, hey, I'm done.
And there's a lot that have actually reached out to me. It's very frustrating for me because, we're a small firm. We can't help everybody. And there's so many people that have asked for documents that I know they're entitled to, and they call me, they text me, they ask all the time, and they're just normal citizens. They don't want to spend money on a lawyer. It may be something that they're just interested in because they're curious. And the lack of transparency, it's not just me. I mean, it was particularly bad with me, but it's everyone. They're just not responding to open records requests across the board. And, the only people that ever have the ability really to sue are maybe a media company, maybe if they have money for a lawyer, and then lawyers themselves. But, the time we took and spent on this lawsuit is time we couldn't spend doing other things. So that's still money out of our pockets. So that's why I'm glad that the court was willing to at least, pay us for our time we reduced our rate because it is taxpayer money, but that hopefully will deter her from doing this in the future. And hopefully other lawyers will be willing to do it as well, because they're denying open records requests at an alarmingly high rate.
So what about the other suits you have against her? Where do they stand? That's the first question. And the part B of that is, do you hear the federal train coming at all? Any rumor of an investigation into Fani Willis?
Yeah, so there is a state Senate investigation going on. So we've got the Georgia State Senate, and there were some news articles where she had been dodging that subpoena for a while. They were trying to investigate her, and they had sent her a subpoena last year. I actually got a similar subpoena, went and testified, didn't challenge my subpoena, had nothing to hide, went and spent the day testifying. But she challenged that subpoena. And so she's been challenging it for almost a year now, and finally lost. And so is going to have to sit for that. I think probably within the next month or two, we'll have to actually answer questions in front of our state Senate. And a lot of those questions are going to be about her spending, because the Senate, the Senate in Georgia really controls the purse strings, and a lot of her money comes from the state coffers. So they have a right to know how she's spending that money and what she's doing with it. And so I think that will be a very interesting investigation. I think it'll be interesting to see what comes to light from that, because they've also asked for a lot of different documents, financial documents. And so maybe they will share that with the federal government. Who knows? But I think that there may be, maybe there will be more as far as the federal government. I don't know. We still don't even have a U.S. attorney here in Atlanta. So we're still waiting for the Northern District to have a U.S. attorney. Until that happens, I don't, it's just rumors, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some type of a federal investigation.
We know that Jim Jordan, a representative in the Senate, he's been looking for, I think, 4 different people that work in and around her. I can't remember the names. Any chance Dexter Bond is one of them? But have they complied? Are they set up to speak before the U.S. Congress?
No, none of those folks have complied. They've all been served with subpoenas. The only one that's actually gone and spoken was Nathan Wade, but his was a very limited testimony. And it's interesting because I read his testimony and it actually contradicts a lot of the records that we've received. So his memory in that testimony is very different than the documents that we've got, and the documents that are coming to light. So I think it's going to be ongoing, because there's a lot of different balls in the air, and there's a lot of documents that are still missing, and they're still trying to keep out of the public view. anytime someone tries to hide something this hard, it always makes you wonder what it is that they're trying to hide. And this has been a really strong effort to hide, documents on so many different fronts, documents in the criminal case, documents in the civil open records case, documents to the federal, Congress, documents to the state Senate. It's a lot. It's a lot of document hiding.
Let me ask one follow-up, if I might, Counselor. With Nathan Wade, you say that he was maybe less than forthcoming with some of his testimony as it compares to documents that you have in hand.
Yes.
So are you saying he committed perjury?
I mean, I think that if someone wants to ever pin him down on that testimony, I think they will find that his memory may not be completely accurate. Let's put it that way. And, his testimony was interesting because he conveniently forgot a lot of things. There were a lot of things that he was saying, I don't remember. I don't remember if I went to DC. I don't remember if I had notes of this. And some other open records lawsuits have come about where they've actually ordered those records and they exist. So, he's saying, I don't have any documents, I don't have any records. And we're finding out in other lawsuits that those records actually do exist. So I think someone really should confront him with that.
And what about the I'll call it the Trump lawsuit? Where does that stand?
Yeah, we're waiting. We could get an opinion any day, actually. So the Supreme Court of Georgia has that. They are deciding whether or not they want to review it. So what happens in Georgia is the Court of Appeals, because of the type of case it is, the Court of Appeals is the one that actually decided it. They decided it in our favor. They said that Fani Willis is out. She's out. So under that order, she's out. She shouldn't even be appealing it any further, in my opinion. In my opinion, that means you're done. You're out. You can't touch it. It needs to go to someone else. She did not pay attention to that order, and she has tried to appeal it further. So instead of taking it and saying, okay, I'm going to give it to someone neutral, I'm going to give it to which in Georgia, it's the Prosecuting Attorneys Council. I'm going to give it to them. They can decide what's going to happen next. Instead of that, she said, no, I'm going to appeal this further. So she's filed suit. It's called a petition for certiorari. She's filed that in our Supreme Court. We filed a response and we're waiting on the Supreme Court. So what they're deciding, it's not on the merits. What it is whether or not they're even going to hear it. So the first stage is for them to say, we're going to step in this or we're not going to step in it, pretty much. And then once they decide, if they decided they were going to hear it, then we get to what's called the merits. Then it's whether or not they, we should win, they should win, things like that. But the first stage is just whether or not they're even going to talk about it. They're even going to look at it. They're even going to deal with it. And you've got to have something where the Court of Appeals really messed up for the Supreme Court to want to get involved. And so I just don't think that we've gotten to that stage.
Yeah. And also would have to be something.
Can I have a follow up on that, Michael? Could I
yes, please do.
Could they issue an order, like a one sentence order, and says, we're not hearing this because it has to go to the Prosecutors Council because there's no standing for Fani Willis to appeal?
Most of the time, what we get is a one-page order that says they're not going to consider the petition. So Fani Willis has filed a petition for certiorari, and most of the time we would get a one-line order that says that petition's denied. They are not granting cert. That is most likely what will happen. That's usually what happens. And they don't have to give us an explanation, and they won't say it goes to PAC. They wouldn't give that much detail. They would just say no. They'd just say denied. But then the practical result is that it does have to go to PAC. She would refer it out to PAC, and they would be the ones that would decide what to do, with the indictment and with the case.
Yeah, I mean, it seems she should have conflict counsel all along the way here, does she?
No, she doesn't. And she should.
Oh.
Yes. I mean, but that's what's reasonable. Like, that's what you would think. As soon as your impartiality was called into question, you would have someone else look at it. I mean, that's what makes sense. I think it's very telling how weak her case is that she's not willing to have someone else look at it. Because if I thought my case was so strong, was so credible, was so strong, I would be willing to let anybody else look at it. I would say my case is so strong, any prosecutor that looks at this is going to prosecute this case. But she's taken the opposite position. She's basically said, my case is not strong enough. Nobody else will prosecute it. I'm the only one that will prosecute it. And to me, that's political.
Oh.
I mean, because if something's a crime, then everybody would know it's a crime. If a crime was committed and you have probable cause, then you should be willing to let anybody look at it. You shouldn't be so scared of someone else, God forbid, looking at it. You should let anybody look at it. And they've got great prosecutors at the Prosecuting Attorneys Council. They've got some of the best prosecutors in the state. So not politically affiliated.
Let's be clear. Your case is not politically affiliated either. You're
No.
representing somebody who came to you because you are one of the greatest attorneys in the state of Georgia. Remind us who that is again. Remind the viewers.
Thank you. Yes. No. So I represent a gentleman. His name is Michael Roman, and he was an employee of the campaign. He was working for the campaign. It's his job. He's a political scientist. And so he was an employee who really has no ties to Georgia whatsoever and gets wrapped up in this indictment very tangentially. Wasn't even recommended by the special purpose grand jury. The grand jury that investigated this was not even recommended to be included, but yet they wanted to cast such a wide net that they included him. And so he's wrapped up in this huge RICO case, having to fly to Georgia to defend himself in something that was just really, really overbroad.
I was looking at the, I think it's called Atlanta First is the site. And if you go to the site, they still, as of today, have a ticker, a scroll of the, is it 19 defendants, I think, total, with red saying no deal,
right,
and green saying deal. Just this, this attack on these folks in a, what they think is kind of a colorful, entertaining way. But I thought even today,
right,
you have something better to put on there.
Right. I know. It's been a while. Yeah, you would think, but I mean, that's the thing. It was flashy. It was news grabbing. And one of the things that we were seeking with the open records request is documents about a media management company. It's called Critical Mention. It's basically a media monitoring company that Fani Willis was using taxpayer dollars to contract with to track and monitor her media and give her a value of her name in the media. Not something that typically you want your tax dollars to go for. I mean, I'm lucky I live in an adjoining county. I no longer live in Fulton County, so it's not all my tax dollars, but I'm sure it's some of my tax dollars because she gets money from the state of Georgia also. And I can tell you as a taxpayer, I really don't want Fani Willis monitoring her media.
Wasn't that like 10 or 20 grand a month or something? It was ridiculous.
It was a 20. So the first contract was a $10,000 contract. The second was another $10,000 contract. And essentially they would put like a dollar value on her name and on her publicity. But they would also track public sentiment, which I thought was really interesting because if you're looking at whether or not you have a crime, okay, so just follow me with this. If you think you have a crime, who cares what the public thinks about it? If you have a slam dunk crime, why do you care if the public supports or doesn't support you prosecuting this? She's tracking that stuff. She's trying to see what the public liked her prosecuting. I mean, it's just crazy to me. Having news articles sent, being able to put the news articles on the website. I mean, it's propaganda.
Oh my gosh. Do you think she still has higher political aspirations? Because that's why you would do that. That's why you're checking the poll.
Oh, I think she had higher political.
I'm just saying, think she still does?
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, I don't know where she lives. Her reality is different than most people, so I don't know.
It's clear her reality is very different than most people's, but I think that her trajectory in life has definitely changed.
Yeah, as I said,
Thanks,
I hear the
Ashleigh.
train. I hear the train a coming. I don't think we'll get a copyright strike for that.
I mean, I would be nervous, because what we've seen lately is we've seen so much just taking something that, look at Mike Roman, look at my client, taking something that's not a crime and you can really, if you really want, you can make just about anything a crime. And there's a lot of jokes about that just about everybody has committed some crime at some point. They don't even know it. So, I wouldn't want to be in a position where I had people investigating things, especially when I had been so fast and loose with money, as we quickly saw when she testified. Not the best record keeper, clearly not the best with open records, just not really paying attention to all the filing requirements that she's got as far as public money, as far as campaign money. Some of the stuff I was looking for was forfeiture money. She commingles forfeiture funds, which that was one of the open records that I'd been looking at. So forfeiture funds can come from state and they can come from federal sources. The statutes are different. You're allowed to use that money for different purposes, but they're very strict. You can't use federal money for certain things and you can't use state money for certain things. So you're supposed to keep them separate so that you can actually show that. She only has one. She puts it all in the same fund. So, that was one of the reasons I think they were so not happy about giving me the itemized forfeitures. And the other thing is I actually don't think they were itemizing a lot of it. like they were supposed to. So, you know, my open records, I cited statutes and I said, I want to see the itemization that you're required to do pursuant to the forfeiture statute. And they would say, no documents exist. I'm like, but the statute requires you to do that.
Documents, right, right. Bizarro world. Yeah. And yet she got reelected. One of the young newcomers to be, they say, Jasmine Crockett from Texas came in to do a fundraiser for her. I don't know how much she raised, whether that was a personal fundraiser or whatever, but there doesn't seem to be any repercussions at this point.
No, I mean, I know that Fulton County has tightened the purse strings somewhat on her budget, which, you know, is needed, but it's still who suffers? The taxpayers. You know, they need a district attorney. They need someone who's doing their job. There's crime through the roof in Fulton County. I mean, no matter how much she wants to manipulate the statistics, crime is still through the roof. People don't feel safe in Atlanta. So, you know, it's really the taxpayers and the citizens that are losing here.
Hey, can we get an update on any of the YSL shenanigans that have trickled through the system? You know, Yak Gotti, is he out? I
don't know. I keep seeing stuff like, oh, he's taking a plea. Oh, there's like a probation revocation. I mean, I think one of the only people that's still in jail is actually the poor guy that testified. I mean, that's
yeah,
just
took a sweet deal. Yeah.
The poor guy who was like confused on the stand. I mean, he's the one that's in prison after all this. Like, that just breaks my heart. But I mean, that's what it seems like. You know, that's what it seems like the leftover is. I think that case, they're trying to make it go away as fast as possible and move on, and sort of the smoke and mirrors, you know, look over here, and trying to indict other cases and things like that.
Now, for folks that don't remember, Ashleigh represented Brian Steele, the attorney for Jeffrey Williams, when he was being found in contempt of court by Judge Glanville and was going to be spending a number of weekends in jail until you stepped in on that matter.
And you also represented a witness. You also represented a witness that they backed down on after keeping him under subpoena for 2 years, because you knew that they were playing shenanigans, I gather, and going to try to put him on the stand and put him in jail with the other guy, the other guy that's in jail, right?
Exactly. Trying to do the exact same thing they did with the other guy, where they, you know, put him in jail and said that he had lied. And at that point, I don't know who knew who was telling the truth. I mean, it was just such a mess. I mean, I think there's always going to be repercussions. I think the repercussions from that trial are going to be really deep with the jury pool, because, you know, everybody knows what happens. And so when you have jurors, they're going to be less trustful of the system. And so I think that's going to be one of the repercussions that we see.
Okay. So before we let you go, what's next on the agenda for you? And John, your husband, great a lawyer, merchant law firm.
Well, it sounds like we may be doing an appeal of the open records lawsuit. Hopefully not. Hopefully we'll get some answers soon on that, and hopefully we'll get some answers soon on the Roman Trump, you know, case, and we can put that to bed, hopefully, and then move forward, you know, and just get back to doing normal good good work and not have to deal with those cases.
Yeah, you've had an amazing year plus, right? With all of these crazy cases.
It's been a busy year. I took some time off at the end of the year, which was kind of nice. And so, you know, that's sort of nice, because it had been a very, very crazy year. So hopefully these two cases, the open records and the, you know, the case that's up in the appellate courts, hopefully those will be over pretty quickly. And then we can just go back to normal work. If there is something that's normal.
It'll always be in the news. It'll always be high profile. It'll always be very high powered, and always be very well done.
Yep, and we appreciate your time and effort. We know that as long as Fani's around, you're not going to totally get away from it, I'm sure.
No, not at all.
We can't wait to hear the latest. Ashleigh, always a pleasure. We know you are so busy. We appreciate your time, and we will reach out again if you don't mind.
Not a problem. Good to see you all.
Take care.
Have a good weekend. Bye.
Bye. You too. She's so cool.
She is so cool. She's such a great lawyer.
Yeah.
Such a great lawyer.
And you know what? I was rewatching some of the Fani Willis hearing, because it is just so entertaining. You know, just moment for moment, it's just her being obstreperous and just being a smart ass and just trying to run the courtroom. It is just so funny. But Ashleigh's manner, it's so deceiving, because she seems like, hey, I'm just talking to you, just like, you know, just like somebody you'd meet at the store or something, just a girlfriend. But she's got a method, you know, and it's a very effective way to do what she needs to do, as obviously the results prove out.
Yep. Absolutely. And hopefully we'll see her again. All right.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, well, I think we ought to just wrap things up. I'm Michael Bryant. Until next time, try to do the right thing.
And please hit that like, share, subscribe, and notify button, and you'll get notified of all Justice Served TV. I'm Linda Kenny Bodden. See you next time.